Good evening. You are all very welcome, and thank you so much for joining us for this week's 120 Dublin Stories with Santa Rita and the Little Museum of Dublin. Now, our guest this evening is Margaret Gormley, the Chief Parks Superintendent with the OPW. Margaret, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for inviting me. Delighted to have the opportunity to talk about the fabulous parks and gardens that we look after in Dublin and throughout the country.
Oh, thank you so much. It's as someone who's had the luxury of spending the last 9 years walking through Stephen's Green into work every morning, bar some of the last few months. I'm looking forward to it. So to everyone joining us, if you've got questions for Margaret as we go through, please do type them in and we will take some time to go through them. But Margaret, I'm going to start with a pretty big question. And when we look at the development of the city, we think of some of our big parks. We think of Phoenix Park, we think of the Ivy Gardens, the Royal Hospital, Stephen's Green. Could you kind of set the scene for me a little bit in terms of what each of these parks were initially established for?
Okay, that's starting at the deep end. And I suppose the reason we have all these parks, they were hugely important for people, through the centuries. Like St. Stephen's Green, that's a space where St. Stephen's Green is today. Like that was originally there from medieval times, and it gets its name from St. Stephen's Hospital, which was a leper hospital, and the grounds were, for people were walking, taking the air. And even from the 1600s, there's references to in 1635, where somewhere where the people, there was no grazing, that there was for people to walk and take the open air. So even our mental health and well-being, even 400 years ago, it was really, really important. And as the city developed, a lot, settlements along the River Liffey, you had the Dublin Castle, and it expanded southwards up to St. Stephen's Green. And at one stage, you would have had the county boundary ran along between St. Stephen's Green and Ivy Gardens, which we would consider the city centre, but that was actually the county boundary. And likewise for the Phoenix Park was originally established as a deer park for the Viceroy. And that was in 1662. So, that was actually in the country. So that was, like their country retreat in a sense, and all their administration staff were built around them. So you had the private secretary, the under secretary's domain, and those are still in existence to this day, even though they've been reused. The Viceroy is actually the current residence of the President of Ireland. The American ambassadors, the Under Secretary, he's based at where was originally the Under Secretary's domain. Private Secretary is actually their residence was at the back of the Oris Neutron, and that was actually where Winston Churchill, as a child, his father was private secretary to the Lord Lieutenant. And he spent a couple of years there in actually living in the Phoenix Park. So these parks were very, very important for different reasons. Some of it was obviously for people to actually take air. Others, it was a private domain for hunting of game. And as Dublin expanded, there was probably three main areas of fashionable display. It was very important for the wealthy, the gentry, to be seen, and those were St. Stephen's Green, a Royal Hospital in Kilmainham, and then in the Phoenix Park. The Phoenix Park was opened up to the public in 1700s, in 1734. So, it was, and that was very ahead of its time if you look at a European context, how these parks were open for the public to enjoy them in that regard. So different reasons why they came into existence, but they were all there, for the public to use them and had access to them for a long number of years. And you're very familiar yourself with St. Stephen's Green being on the green. And, the green was public for a long, long number of years, but then it went into decline in the late 1700s, early 1800s, and it was actually enclosed. And it became a keyholder park. And only those residents who lived on the perimeter of St. Stephen's Green had the privilege of walking in St. Stephen's Green. And that was a key holder for nearly 80 years. It was private. Can you imagine the people of Dublin not being allowed to get into St. Stephen's Green? And it was Lord Ardelon, the Guinness family, who was responsible. He was actually a child who was brought into St. Stephen's Green as a key holder, his parents were, and had access to this. And as he got older, he felt this should be back for the people of Dublin and Ireland. And he actually paid off the debts of the key holders, over £2,000 in those days. And it spent another £20,000 in 1877 and reopened St. Stephen's Green in 1880. And what you see today is actually his legacy, because it's the layout that was put in the late 1880s, you know, with the two lakes. And there's a very interesting story. I'm probably rambling a little bit, but you know, and I suppose it's really because people are very familiar with St. Stephen's Green. There was objections to him opening up St. Stephen's Green to the public and the key holders not having their exclusive privileges. And one of those was the Royal College of Surgeons. They had private access. So there was a lot of complaints about him doing this work. And newspapers of the day were all exchanging letters, and he would write back and the college would write back. And the highest point in St. Stephen's Green is opposite the Royal College of Surgeons. When he dug out the lakes, he built a large mound and he blocked their view into St. Stephen's Green. And what is really interesting is Lord Ardilaun was asked, he was still alive when his statue was erected to him in St. Stephen's Green. And I suppose most people, the statue would be put in the centre of the park where you're able to look over where all you have surveyed, in a sense. But if you ever look again, when you're on the Lewis or going outside St. Stephen's Green, Lord Ardilaun's statue is facing out of St. Stephen's Green, facing the Royal College of Surgeons. So you can interpret that as you will.
Yeah, he sounds like a gentleman with a sense of humor. I'll give you that.
Absolutely.
I never knew that story. That's fascinating. And so in the history of Stephen's Green, like, so Lord Ardilaun is obviously a key player. Like, who are the other people who are kind of instrumental, or the key moments that were instrumental in the life cycle of the park?
There's a number of different moments, I suppose, in a sense. And it would have been the City Assembly who decided in 1635 to actually enclose St. Stephen's Green. It was a large commonage prior to that. There would have been grazing of cattle and sheep. And that they decided that the green would be enclosed. And that was about 60 acres. So all the houses that you see today on the perimeter of St. Stephen's Green are actually on the original St. Stephen's Green Park. But it was very, very swiftly after that, in 1663, that the city needed money to raise money. So they sold off plots all around St. Stephen's Green. And the present residences that you see on the green, their original owners had to plant 6 sycamore trees as part of the deal for getting their land on St. Stephen's Green. And that was the first tree plantings. And they all had to build a wall at the end of their property to enclose the green. So you had a green with a wall that was built by 60 different people. So you can imagine it was a fairly motley exterior to a park. And then in the 1800s, the railings that you see today were actually erected around St. Stephen's Green with the bollards, and that gave it its formality and its early Victorian feel and look.
Because I guess the promenade on the north side of the green would always have been
like the walks around St. Stephen's Green. You had Bow Walk, French Walk, Leeson's Walk. These were named after the Bow Walk was really for the dandies to walk, you know, up and down and promenade. It was very, very important to be seen. French Walk was after the French Huguenots. Leeson's Walk was the brewer. Leeson Street was named after him as well. So, you know, it was very much associated with to be seen. And there was space for everyone, you know, like it wasn't just that it was exclusive for a particular privileged society. And I think that was, you know, very, very much with the philanthropic plans, you know, with the Guinness family, was to open up St. Stephen's Green for everyone to be able to use it. And, you know, even moving close, you know, to Ivy Gardens, which is a park very, very close to, like Ivy Gardens was set up as an exhibition gardens in 1865. And over 1 million people went to that garden when it was opened. You had the indoor exhibitions, which is the present day National Concert Hall. But it didn't matter what part of society you belonged to. There was a different entry fee depending on which class of society you came from. So if you were gentry, you paid one fee. If you were an ordinary person, you paid another fee. And even inside, there was different marquees, and the pints of Guinness were priced accordingly to your social status. So you could mix with your gentry if you wanted to pay X amount for your pint of Guinness, but if you were an ordinary person, you still could avail of a drink. So, you know, it was amazing the efforts that it went to be inclusive. And this is, you know, in 1860s, you know, when you think back, very, very interesting.
It's amazing, but the kind of, you know, I think the focus that is very rightly being put on inclusion today, the idea that it was kind of naturally ingrained in the kind of the way they were programming events even at that point is quite incredible. And so I guess kind of I just kind of step back for a moment and kind of come to yourself before I can kind of jump between history and the present tense a little bit more. Just to everyone who's joining us on the call this evening, you know, the Chief Parks Superintendent with the OPW. You know, tell us a little bit about what your role actually entails.
That's a very good question. I suppose the Office of Public Works is a large organisation. It's a very old organisation. It's actually been in existence longer than the state itself, and has been charged over the centuries with, you know, I suppose even putting in famine roads. You know, there was an awful lot of different roles. And today the organisation is responsible for, you know, government offices countrywide. You know, it is responsible for flooding and, you know, all the mechanisms being put in there, but also it's charged in the heritage portfolio with managing all the national monuments, but also the historic properties. And that's the section that I work in, is in historic properties. And historic properties, we've over 30 of them throughout Ireland, from the Glebe Gallery in Donegal, right down to Derrynan, the home of Daniel O'Connell and Kerry. And then, you know, a good number scattered throughout the country and also in Dublin. Now, a large number of those are parks and gardens. And you know, that's my expertise. I've actually a degree in landscape horticulture, along with a few other little bits of qualifications added on since then. But that's my primary interest. So with all the portfolio we have, you know, there's arboretums, there's designed landscapes associated with very important buildings, like we look after the grounds of Leinster House, the Customs House. You have memorials and cemeteries, say the Irish National War Memorial Garden, Arbor Hill, Grange Gorman Military Cemetery, all of those. And then we have deer parks. Phoenix Park would be a deer park, but also some of the domain landscapes, you know, throughout the country would have Doneraile in North Cork. That would have originally been a deer park. And then we have obviously botanical gardens as well, the National Botanic Gardens in Glasnevin and also at Kilmacurra. So there's a wide range of properties there which have a lot of, while we have buildings, castles, and a good number of them, the grounds are, you know, equally important, you know, and no more so than in the last year with COVID. All our workers were actually classified as essential workers, because people needed space for mental health as well as physical health. And we had to maintain all the parks because we had never seen such an appreciation of parks and such use in parks over the last year. It was quite amazing. And, you know, to be able to try and keep with that as well, you know, with all the demands that required, sometimes we didn't get time to everything, but we did try to, you know, facilitate the public in every fashion we could.
And it's one word that when we caught up earlier this week, one word that you used in conversation was, you spoke to me about, you used the word curation when talking about the guest experience. And, you know, obviously in the museum world, that's something that, you know, it's a word we think about and talk about an awful lot. And hearing you say that when you were, like, I think it was in the kind of context of parks that it was mentioned, and you were talking about the perfume scent and kind of creating experiences for guests. And so I'd love to just know a little bit, you know, using whichever example you're kind of, you think to go to, but, you know, how you actually approach landscaping and building, you know, the kind of infrastructure and layout in one of these parks.
It's a very interesting question. And I suppose, you know, we could talk for weeks about, you know, the philosophy and the ethos of the parks. And what the Office of Public Works is charged with is the properties we have from a parks and garden point of view are either of international significance or national significance. So we have to look at those. Our role is the conservation and presentation of those properties. So obviously we conserve them to, if they're a particular period, but within that then, as you mentioned, the curatorial or the visitor experience. We're very conscious of that all the time. And we do want to offer the visitor a lovely experience to get the sense of the essence of the site. And say, for example, St. Stephen's Green Park, like we have counters on all the gates. People might notice them, or the next time they're going in, they'll see the little black box. We've over 4.3 million people who pass through the gates of St. Stephen's Green on a yearly basis. Now that's obviously pre-COVID. And we'll be quite conscious that not a lot of people walk this route in the morning on their way to work. So say the Victorian bedding displays that would go into the centre of St. Stephen's Green, we actually plant hyacinths. And the hyacinths give a beautiful scent in the morning, and they're just a little edge around the main displays. But people walking through early or late in the evening will get that little waft of perfume. And these are all little experiences that, you know, put people in a good mood and adds to the floral display. So we're conscious of what we plant, why we plant it. You know, we look at what's the benefits to biodiversity, what's the benefits to the landscape, what's the benefit to the experience. And then obviously we're looking at it for pest and disease and low maintenance if we can, you know, but we're balancing all these different strands together to try and ensure that the experience is as best that we can get.
But then if you're kind of, paying attention to guest experience, but then biodiversity and the kind of the different elements that you're mentioning, but then I can imagine throw conservation on top of that because of the kind of, as you said, the importance and the kind of the significance of many of the parks and the kind of the sites within, it must become a very challenging balance to kind of maintain from meeting conservation and kind of constantly protecting the sites.
It is a fine balance, and we always refer back to the Florence Charter or the Borough Charter, you know, that they will give guidelines to us. And in contrast to buildings, parks and gardens are evolving, they're growing all the time. So, you know, material will grow, it will go into decline, and, you know, that opens up opportunities as well. And, you know, it's to get that balance. So it's always in a state of flux. And our core principles is to actually keep referring back to what the original intention of that site was. And that's always a very good guideline. You know, we're not following all the modern trends. And, you know, even if you take rewilding that everyone is talking about, if you look at that word, it's that means you're reintroducing something's there. So we actually, if you look at the Victorian gardens, you know, they cut those with scythes. Like a lot of the wildflower meadows were in existence in those days. You know, since Phoenix Park is still the highest percentage of semi-natural grasslands, original grasslands right back, haven't been improved over the last 200 years. So, you know, we're looking at all the different strands and making sure, but looking what is appropriate for the site. And obviously, you know, we have to be able to manage them for the visiting public. You know, the numbers have increased over the last 18 months significantly. And to try and balance that, you know, we don't want people walking through the long grass where we might have skylarks nesting, you know, and that's where, you know, we're actually putting out new signage at the moment, because we would never have had this issue before, because people are all spreading out now. They want to be either 2 meters apart. So, you know, people are going into areas that might not have the same volume of public before. So it's to try and educate the public, you know, why we're doing certain things, why we leave this grass long. We don't want you going there. It's just not a matter of cutting it, you know, to keep it mown or that. So it's all the time to get that balance and the nuances, and to work with the public. Like we try to put out as much as possible on social media or, you know, information, science, etc.
Yeah. And when you mentioned there a moment ago that the sites that are kind of under the care of the OPW would be sites that were deemed of international significance or domestic importance. Like what sort of parameters would that cover? Like how is a site determined in that way?
Well, I suppose historically, some of the sites would have been just handed over to the state. But we, in the last 20, 30 years, anything that has come across, we would actually review it first before to see if it is of national significance, you know, or else, you know, some places will go to local authorities, because we have a different remit in a sense. A local authority, a response to the local people's needs, where the OPW, while we do work very closely with all our local communities, there is a national significance to a particular site. So, we have to try and keep that balance, that this particular, property, be it Arbor Hill or whatever, there is a greater need or essence there that we have to try and preserve with that. Like, Arbor Hill is, for example, is a commemorative site. So, we would be trying to keep any uses in that site as appropriate to that. If you want to walk your dog, we would ask you in that particular property to keep your dog on a lead, as appropriate for that site. And we'd suggest, if you want to let your dog off the lead, there's other spaces, might be a little further to walk, but so it's to try and keep that balance at all times.
It's fascinating because you're kind of you're dealing in history as well as kind of there's an awful lot going on. It's an incredible, the scale of what you're all evidently doing is incredible. And like a term that I heard or I saw online when I was kind of just doing a little bit of prep for this evening was this idea of green flag parks. And I know Stephen's Green has been one since that's really been available. What does that mean?
Well, it's very interesting. I suppose, there was no benchmark in Ireland. What was a good park? What wasn't a good park? And it was not as in a good park, how it looked, how it was managed, how it was looked after, how it was presented. So there was international different awards out there. And the Green Flag scheme is a scheme that is throughout the world in that. And really, you are judged independently. Somebody comes in, judges you, looks after, and there's 8 criteria that they actually look at. They look at the health and safety, the environmental management. Is it a welcoming place? How do you deal with biodiversity, the historic landscapes? Is there community involvement? And how is it managed itself? And you have to make an application. A big management plan goes in, judges come out independently, and every second year you're blind judged. So you don't know when the judges are arriving. And OPW has been very lucky, has got a number of Green Flag awards for a number of their sites in Stephen's Green, Phoenix Park, National War Memorial Gardens, Castletown House. So, and it's great for our staff as well, because it's feedback to them that they know they're actually doing a good job in that regard. And it also assures the public, if our tourists who are coming from abroad who are familiar with them will be aware, oh, this site is a Green Flag site. Therefore, they're actually looking after the environment. We use very little chemicals. We're very sustainable in how we go about our business. So it's been a great scheme. We've been lucky to have been awarded Green Flags for a number of years now. And Phoenix Park actually won just when you're mentioning awards, won the World Urban Gold Award the first year that was awarded. Just 2 parks in the world were awarded it. Centennial Park in Sydney and Phoenix Park in Dublin. And that was based on, all the management, all the ethos of the site, how, the processes that OPW went through to make sure, it was a good park and it was relevant to, for the current needs, but also trying to look to the future as well. And yet always keeping an eye on the past, if that makes sense. We're drawing from the past to present to the present, but also to ensure that there is a resource there for the future as well. When people after us are going to have the Phoenix Park or have St. Stephen's Green to enjoy. So we've been very fortunate, there's a very hardworking team behind the scenes. I can sit here today, but there's a lot of feet going, I'm thinking of an analogy of a spawn, all busy, pedaling away underneath to make sure we present it to the best we can. And we hope the public, the feedback has been very good. And, the odd time we do get things wrong, I think that's only natural, but we've very skilled gardeners, general operatives, constables in different sites. And then there's obviously an administration team and senior management as well who guide us in that regard.
Yeah. Oh, well, congratulations on the awards. It's wonderful news, and it's a great win for Ireland as well that you're bringing home in that regard. And actually, when you're talking about Phoenix Park, something I did want to ask you was, I know Phoenix Park is recognized as being one of the largest urban parks in all of Europe, if not the world, and you can correct me on the kind of what the fact is there. But I couldn't help but wonder how a park that large and central has managed to stay protected and kind of intact in its in its scale and its form for as long as it has, and that, residential developments haven't kind of crept in over time. And I'd love to know more about the history of how the park has stayed as it is.
Well, I suppose that's a very interesting question. And the Phoenix Park is actually twice the size of New York Central Park, just to give it a little bit of context. 1,752 acres. It is literally, I suppose, enclosed by 11 kilometers of wall. And that wall is erected in 1680.
Wow.
So that has protected the Phoenix Park. Its original intention was to keep the deer in when the fallow deer were introduced to the Phoenix Park for the gentry for hunting, but was to keep the public out. That was the original intention. But the park was very quickly, in the 1700s, opened up to the public. The wall has, in effect, safeguarded the Phoenix Park for the last 350 years. No development has taken place within that wall of the park, other than the development of the institutions within the park. And even at that, it is very modest in scale, and how to present the park. So like the Phoenix Park it's 93% of it is natural habitats. There's only 7% of the Phoenix Park taken up with roads and buildings. And, that's when you think about that we're only a couple of kilometers from the city centre, from O'Connell Street in Dublin, to have, it's the largest urban park in a European context, within that close proximity to the city centre. And yet you have wild deer roaming the park. You can come up here and listen to, morning chorus, from birdsong. It is, just a fabulous resource for everyone. And I suppose during COVID, the privileged people who lived within 5 kilometers of the Phoenix Park, which was, we actually checked with the CSO, Central Statistics Office, 483,000 people live within 5 kilometers of the Phoenix Park. So while it was a local park, it was actually accommodating an awful lot of people in that regard. And but that's their neighborhood park. But the Phoenix Park works at a local level, at a national level, and also at an international level as well. People do travel to actually experience the Phoenix Park.
Yeah, but sure, it's such an incredible space. And I think as someone who grew up in the city, I have so many formative childhood memories of going up to see the deer in the Phoenix Park on like a Wednesday evening when parents just wanted to run the energy out of you. But it kind of got me. One thing that you said to me when we caught up earlier this week was that Phoenix Park was the most unique grassland in Dublin due to the constant grazing of the deer. I'd love you to talk to me a little bit more about the kind of wider flora and fauna, the kind of the ecosystem that actually exists up there.
It's very interesting when you actually look at the Phoenix Park and, peel back the different layers, peel back the history, peel back the buildings, peel back the people associated with it. And it is a habitat. Like there's 25 different habitats within the whole of the Phoenix Park. We done a recent survey in Áras Nuachtaráin for the president, and like we recorded over 850 different species. But the grasslands in the Phoenix Park are very unique, and they're unique because we have deer grazing. Up to 30 years ago, there was cattle grazing as well in the Phoenix Park, but we've had fallow deer in the Phoenix Park from the 1600s. And that in itself has a browsing line. People might ask, why is there no wildflowers in flower out in the middle of the Phoenix Park? The deer eat everything. They'll even eat roses. They went out to one evening, they went to Castleknock to visit a lady's garden, a couple of them, and ate all her roses and went for a swim in her swimming pool and walked back in the gate again. So the deer will eat everything. And next time people are in the Phoenix Park, if you look at the trees, there's no branches on the lower any of the trees. They're all stripped because of the deer. They'll all with the time be grazing. The grasslands, obviously we've all the various pitches in the Phoenix Park, but if you go, from the Ordnance Survey Road right across to the Acres Road, which would be near the American Ambassadors, that whole area, that's all natural. We don't go in and improve the grasslands there. We don't go in and sow grass seed. We'd be very, very careful, not to introduce any new species into that. That has been browsed for centuries by the deer. And in the Dublin city context, the grasslands in the Phoenix Park are actually the last natural, semi-natural grasslands in all of Dublin. So they're very important for habitat. They actually provide, a habitat for loads of invertebrates or small mammals, and also then obviously for the deer, for fodder as well. So, to try and get the balance, but then we have wetlands in the park. We've 5 different types of tree habitats within the Phoenix Park, different plantations, semi-natural woodlands. People are very familiar, with Chesterfield Avenue, it's often an interview question when gardeners come for interview, can you name what the pattern of the trees are, on Chesterfield Avenue with the lime, the horse chestnut, in the Phoenix Park. And it's all part of that scale of the park. There's a formality through the main avenue. And then, that leads up to the the president and the ambassadors. And then, as you move out from that, there is, the more naturalistic landscapes. And, if you're looking for, horticulture per se, the People's Gardens are there, near Parkgate Street. And like they're from the 1880s, and beautiful displays, bedding displays. And there's a lovely gate fence around that, so that keeps the deer out. Likewise, if people would like to go up to the Phoenix Park Visitor Centre, we have restored the Victorian kitchen garden there. And it's over 2.5 acres of Victorian horticulture with fruit, vegetables, herbaceous borders, and the displays there are just magnificent. The gardeners who look after that, it's open 365 days of the year. And, even though it's on a large scale, it's very manageable for people to look at. Oh, look, they have carrots, they have celery, we're going corn on the cob, all the different brassicas, the onions, all the like herbaceous border, apple, fruit trees. People don't have to grow 2.5 acres, but they can have 2 meters by 2 meters at home and ask our guy, what would you recommend? And the guys and girls are, just delight. Sorry, when I say guys and girls, it's one guy and one girl, just in case people think we've loads of who look after that area, Brian and Kathy. But it's great for people. Everyone is into grow your own at the moment. And, to see the plants, the vegetables, the fruit, and also to see, I've green fly, I've black spot, what'll I do? My onions are not, they're bolting, and we'll experience the same problems, because if there's blight, we're going to get it the same as everywhere else in that regard. So it's good to see we grow organically. All our produce there is actually grown sustainably and organically, and we do sell any surpluses to the public just at the visitor centre there. And we actually leave the crops in the ground as long as possible, just to let the people experience them. And obviously this year we've no school groups in, but we do bring a lot of school groups in to educate children. A lot of children in urban areas don't know where food comes from. And I think it's very, very important that they realize, this is where your food comes from. It's healthy, all of that. I remember once showing children peas, and took pods of peas and, was opening them up. One child wouldn't eat the peas. And I asked him why. I thought he was going to say, oh, well, they were sprayed or something like that. And I was like, no, they're not. He said, no, peas come out of a tin. And I thought it was very sad indictment, that some children don't realize where their food comes from. And I think that's essential. If we have, obesity, all of that, bad, people children don't understand. And I think if they know where their food comes from, they have more of appreciation, and then they will actually make better decision making in their, their diets. Yeah. And we actually ran a nutrition course one season for the public, because we're quite conscious of what we grow, and then how to use that and make good nutritional decisions. So all the time we're looking at different offerings for the public.
Yeah, that's an amazing thing, because you're then playing into the fact that not only are you enabling people to get out into the fresh air, get out into nature, which has such incredibly important mental health values, but you're also then throwing in the value add of learning more about nutrition and actually kind of engaging kids, grown-ups, and everyone in actually understanding the food cycle that bit more. It's incredible work that you're doing. It really, really is. And it's like one thing that you had mentioned, or I read about somewhere that I was really, I guess, selfishly really curious to know more about. One initiative that you're currently working on, I think sounds like it has the potential to be one of the most important tourist attractions kind of at the heart of the city, and a thing that everyone's going to love people are just going to be fascinated to get a chance to explore. Am I correct in thinking that there is kind of a consideration underway as to if it's possible to actually conserve and renovate the magazine fort within the park?
You're very well, very knowledgeable on the Office of Public Works is very keen to conserve the various buildings in their properties throughout the country. And Magazine Fort in the Phoenix Park, it has such a history and, and different phases of history, where the gunpowder was stored because, they didn't want Dublin Castle to blow up. That was why the Magazine Fort was built in the Phoenix Park. It was actually built at a location where Cromwell's brother had a house in the Phoenix Park. But the fort has been derelict for a long number of years. And for the 100th anniversary of the Rising in 2016, Commissioner John McMahon made the decision that he'd like to open up the fort, even just on a limited basis, because the fort was to be blown up in 1916 as the symbol for the Rising. But they couldn't get in on the day. The commandant had went to the races and had taken the keys with them. And the explosion was outside the wall of the fort and it wasn't significant enough. And the first fatality of 1916 was the son of the commandant going to Chapel Lizard Village to raise the alarm. So the fort has huge significance right from the 1700s, 1800s, and then, early 1900s as well. So for those reasons, the OPW wants to restore the fort. And we actually, the Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, and Pascal Donoghue, who were Taoiseach and a Minister of Finance at the time, had supported OPW with funding to actually start the restoration of the fort. Mm-hmm. So we're actually hoping to start conserving the walls of the fort initially. And we're hoping to lodge a planning application for the fort because a number of the structures inside do need to be conserved. There was a bakery there that was used to bake bread for the soldiers during the Rising. So, there's all the different elements, strands of social history. Families lived in the fort. There was little bastions on the perimeter where families lived because a fort, if you can imagine, was to store gunpowder. So it had to be very dry. Mm. So it was actually, now you weren't allowed to smoke, obviously, in the fort, even though part of our archaeology, we discovered clay pipes. So they were having a sneaky smoke. So they were, but at least we still have the fort. So the OPW is working with Fáilte Ireland, is hoping to lodge a planning application in the not too distant future for the fort. And that will be opening it back up with toilets and a little visitor reception area to repurpose the existing buildings in the outer part and conserve the rest of the fort with a nice walkway around it, a perimeter walkway. There's beautiful views from the Magazine Fort in the park. It's actually on very high ground. And then if you're up on the perimeter of the bastions, you can see right across the Liffey to the National War Memorial Gardens, up to the Royal Hospital. You can actually see into the city centre. And you've also views back out over to Farmley across the Phoenix Park. So it'll be a huge, with great interest when we opened it in 2016. So obviously it's closed at the moment again. And once we get all the works done, not when we get them all done, when we get sufficient works done that it's safe to open it again for the public, the plan is to bring the public back in with guided tours and really start to show, different elements of the history of the park.
Oh, I can't wait, she says selfishly.
I know, I think it'll be fabulous. It will be fabulous.
It sounds like a wonderful project. It really does. And then, so just kind of, I seem to have a mountain of questions about Phoenix Park, but like the park at night, I've memories of kind of walking out from concerts late at night, and it almost has that kind of dark sky reserve type feel about it when you're there at night. And so, like from a kind of, not necessarily the Phoenix Park, but kind of the portfolio in general, like, do things like light pollution, sound pollution, and so forth, does that have to factor into your biodiversity and sustainability planning?
Absolutely, Sarah. It's very, very important. These are habitats, they're homes as well. And we're very conscious, obviously, of the public who use these places, but it's lovely to hand them back at night. All parks in Dublin are locked at night. Phoenix Park is unique that it isn't locked at night. We do have a hospital, we have the police headquarters, the emergency response unit is based in Phoenix Park, also the president and different residents in the Phoenix Park. So the park by necessity is opened at night, all the side gates are closed. And it is the last park in Europe to have the original gas lighting in the park. So that's actually part of the history of the park, you know, to have the gas lighting, the original lamp structures all up Chesterfield and other areas. And there's a lot of scientific evidence now that light pollution is very detrimental to invertebrates and particularly moths for pollination. And, you know, we depend on all of these invertebrates for our food. So if we are eliminating the pollinators, you know, maybe not our generation, but generations coming later, like there will be food scarcity. So Phoenix Park is actually a dark sky oasis. And we very carefully monitor our pollution levels. We don't light up all the structures in the Phoenix Park, if you notice. Even the Phoenix Column, it is actually lit up very, very sensitively with LED lighting. And we don't, you know, have all the different colors on at different times. It might be only for St. Patrick's Day or very limited number of times. And again, that's just as, you know, it is a habitat at night. We like to hand it back to the wildlife at night. If you come through the park at 3 a.m, you'll see the deer just wandering all around the park. They're in totally different locations than from 9 to 5. You know, they know when the people have gone and they'll just move all over the park, where normally during the day they'll be on the southern side of the park. You know, they've even been known to walk up to the Navan Road. You know, so they do move around at night, and it is their home as well. So, you know, it's to try, I suppose we use the word balance a lot, and that's what we're trying to keep, is a balance. And we have loads of running groups who come into the Phoenix Park at night, and you'll often see them with their little torches, you know, the little miners' helmets torches, and they keep to the paths and they walk, you know, run up and down Chesterfield. Or even, you know, last winter, you know, with COVID, you know, there is plenty of lighting on Chesterfield. It's very comfortable, safe for walking. And particularly when the public, in a sense, took over the outer footpath. It used to be a cycle lane. So we had to move the cycle lane onto the hard shoulder, but it allowed the public plenty of space and light to be walking up and down Chesterfield, even in the dark.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's like one thing that's naturally come into, I guess, a number of different aspects of this conversation so far has been the mental health and the physical health benefit of getting out into nature and getting out into our parks and just getting out into nature. And when you look at your work, when you look at what your teams are accomplishing, like, does some part of you look at it as a public health remit, or how do you kind of align the health part of what you're doing?
I suppose it's an added on value in a sense. We don't work for the Department of Health, but our parks provide so many benefits that help to reduce the impacts on, you know, the hospitals, etc. And I know there has been studies done abroad. There was one done by the NHS in Scotland, and they had said if 1 in 100 unhealthy people took up walking daily, it would reduce the NHS bill by 85 million. Now that's just going out walking. And, you know, Phoenix Park has over 30 kilometers of footpaths, surfaced footpaths. So, you know, there's plenty of car parks. All the car parks are linked into the various footpath trails. You can have one on Chesterfield, or you can go into other areas. And, you know, so health benefits hugely important for mental health, like people with diabetes, you know, significant reduction. There is a thing called forest bathing. Now, it's not sunbathing or nudist bathing. It is actually just being out in the fresh air. And that has significant reductions on stress. And, you know, there's loads of research, you know, a school that has a green area beside it, the actual academic achievements will be higher. You know, green literally does improve people's mental health as well.
It's and then, like, kind of the nature of the type of spaces that you are under your control, from the day someone is born until the day they die, they engage with the park. You know, how does that play into your programming? Because it just must.
Well, we have to be conscious of all users, and we have in the Phoenix Park, like there's women's groups who actually come to keep fit with the buggy, with the baby in the buggy. They'll actually do keep fit classes, and the buggy is there. And you'll have loads, men and women, walking or jogging with the buggy, and the child gets their run as well, even though it might be only 3 weeks old, right up to, our elder population. During COVID, we actually restricted access into the wall garden at the Phoenix Park Visitor Centre to those who were cocooning, because there was nowhere safe that they could go. They weren't going to shopping centres, and when everywhere was closed, and this was at the very beginning when all car parks were closed, we actually opened the car park at Phoenix Park Visitor Centre for those who were cocooning, that they could drive safely there, not interact with anyone. And our wall garden, we asked the public not to go in, and 2 of our guides were at the entrance to welcome the elderly who wanted to come in. There was seating there. And, the amount of people who contacted us afterwards and said, we could bring our mother or our father to somewhere where we knew it was safe. And obviously, because of their age profile, they loved looking at the vegetables because they brought them back to their youth as well. So, we're looking at the whole spectrum, what we offer for everyone. And we do have pop concerts. You mentioned it there yourself in the Phoenix Park. And that's a different demographic. There's not a lot for teenagers. They always say, oh, they only go to parks drinking. No, teenagers are excellent. They come out, they're doing all their Gaelic or hurling or different sports. But we do have the odd concert as well. We have Bloom in the Phoenix Park. So there's something here for everyone. And we try to look at all our sites. Ivy Garden, we do Taste of Dublin in Ivy Gardens. There's a comedy series there. So there's different offerings in different parks, to try and have something for everyone. And I'm only talking, like Dublin Castle has a huge range of activities as well. Likewise, Farmley, Castletown. And people should just look at the OPW website or go to Heritage Ireland. All the events, we obviously have very limited events at the moment because of COVID, but there's loads of plans in place, so just to keep an eye on those, and whichever site they're interested in, just keep watching.
It's I've just had a quick look. I've a large number of questions coming in from the guests who are with us here this evening. Louise is asking, what issues do you face over sustainability in the park, and kind of, what advancements have been made, and what have we still to do?
Okay. We're always looking at sustainability in the Phoenix Park, and how we manage. For over 20 years, we actually have not sprayed the road verges on Chesterfield Avenue, for example. We bring in a road sweeper, to try and environmental management. Even all our equipment, we're actually moving a lot of our fleet now over to electric vehicles. We're actually in the process of tendering for an electric Jeep for the rangers, which all our rangers cycle during the summer months and dry weather. They do walking patrols. With our staff, we would how they go about their work. For example, say in Oris Nuchtron, we have large orchards there. All the apples are juiced, and they're actually, the president uses those when he has garden parties. So literally the food is going from the garden, it's walked literally into the Oris itself. So we're all the time looking at air miles, least way possible. We've recycled timber that we have. If a tree is dangerous in the Phoenix Park, we've made beautiful picnic tables in the Phoenix Park on the Firs Road, where they're interlinking picnic tables. So we're trying to look at social inclusion, that people are close to each other. Any disabled person is actually not put at the end, which often happens. They're actually included into the center. But that timber is timber from the Phoenix Park, was milled here in the park, dried, and then recycled back into picnic tables. So we're all the time looking at how best we can as effective, be as minimal as possible, and use local as well.
It's wonderful, and it's wonderful to hear kind of how much is being achieved and what's already going on, and the focus on trying to find ways to actually open inclusion and make the parks more inclusive and kind of welcoming spaces is really heartening as well. You touch on the fact that the Oris is within your remit there. Like, it's the idea that, so does the food that is grown in the President's Garden, tell us a bit more about it as a kind of an area, what's going on within the gardens and just...
Yeah, Áras Nuachtaráin is a domain of about 130 acres. And obviously the President and Mrs. Higgins, it's their place of their residence, but also his place of work. And then there is gardens associated with that. We have over 2 hectares of a certified organic gardens there for the last over 10 years. So all the produce in the gardens is actually sent up to the house. And when there's heads of state or meetings, or the chef in the house will actually use all the produce from the garden. We'll actually, at the beginning of the years, the 2 of them will meet up, look at the seed lists. What foods do they want? What does the president like? Does he like turnips? Does he like this? He, and we will grow that, and obviously grow strawberries, etc., for garden parties. So the food is very important, like when there is a head of state, Irish horticulture is hugely important. And the president is actually able to say, well, actually, or he might even say it's on the menu, from the wall garden. Like even the flowers, we supply a lot of cut flowers into the house for the floral displays. So all the time looking at how sustainable this can be run. There's even hens. We've organic hens in the Áras. All the eggs are collected daily and they go up to make the cakes, the bread, etc. So it's very sustainable. The president President McAleese before him and President Higgins have a very green agenda and very, very much a sustainability and biodiversity. And he asked us to do the biodiversity audit for the Áras. It's the first one in the country that was done over a full year to capture as much as possible. And the public are able to visit Áras Nuachtaráin once everywhere is opened up again. You can actually do a garden tour of the grounds of Áras Nuachtaráin, and we're currently, over the winter, we've actually restored the vegetable garden. Went back to the original layout and put back in nice surface paths. So we hope next year to be able to offer that to the public. And you can get the tickets to go to the visitor centre in the Phoenix Park, and keep an eye on the president's website. It'll give details when people can go in, and they can, get an escorted tour around this beautiful grounds within there, and the president, and meet the president's dogs as well. And it's all part. And the president has been known on occasions to, he could be working in his office and will just put his head out and greet if there's visitors there.
That's beautiful. I would dare say the dogs will make the day of whoever's on those tours. That's really quite gorgeous. And then, like, one thing that I hadn't realized is that there is ways that we, the public, can actually get involved with some of the data collection that's going on with the, say, butterfly and bee monitoring. And this is all absolutely news to me. And to anyone who's not aware, tell me more.
Well, the public, the National Biodiversity Data Centre are all the time taking data from the public on any species in Ireland. And if the public want to look at their website, there's a portal there and you can record. So as part of the Phoenix Park, we're always encouraging citizen science. And one of our guides leads that at the visitor centre, and we'll do butterfly monitoring. He'll actually lead walks on bumblebee monitoring, explain not bumblebee, the different types of bees, native Irish bee, etc. And, show people how to actually upload this data, because it's very important to record the species where, when was the first skylark seen in the Phoenix Park? Like, we've had a record now of a woodpecker has been recorded twice in the Phoenix Park. I haven't seen it myself, but all of this is, it's empowering any person to go out and record and to upload the data. And then we can actually go into and look at the maps, the public can as well, and see what has been recorded where. So we can actually, it helps us to build up a picture, because we try to make all our decisions in the Phoenix Park and all our sites based on science. So the scientific evidence is always very, very important for us. If we're doing grassland management, or, how we manage our trees, all of that is very, very important. So no, we'd encourage, and our visitor centre actually reopened on Monday, like all the other galleries, yourselves, so by all means, public are very welcome, and to talk to our guides. And, we will, once we're allowed to do outdoor tours again, very, very small numbers at the moment, we will be re-engaging with the public then again.
Great, but yeah, it doesn't. Your heart just sings opening the doors. It's it's our team have been beyond delighted to be able to reopen and actually welcome guests physically in to visit the museum again after months this week. I think the morale has been great, but like when you're talking about the scale of work and the scale of ambition that's actually being achieved across the sites being run by the OPW, it sounds like kind of, well, I'm making assumptions there, but it sounds like we're punching well above our weight on a kind of a global scale. Like, how does, the parks, the public realm spaces, how is what we are running and what we have available to us here in Ireland, how does it compare on an international scale?
Well, I would be liaising with different colleagues in other countries. And I think for such a small country, the wealth of parks that we have, and that's not just OPW, Dublin City Council, Fingal County Council, we have a fabulous repository of parks. We have great engagement with the public and a great appreciation of the public. And, we do maintain them very well. But I think it's not for us to say, it'll be for the public to say in that sense. And, for example, you mentioned the green flags earlier. We've been asked to liaise with the memorial in New Zealand or in Australia, in Canberra. They want to know, can they have a copy of the OPW's conservation management plan for the Irish National War Memorial Gardens? And they want to know, could they have a talk with us on how we go about the management of that? Because the War Memorial Gardens was the first site in Ireland to get the Heritage Green Flag Award. So I think the fact that, we're such a small country and large countries are looking at what we do, it's a great, for the work from our architects, from our admin, from all the different strands, to be acknowledged in that sense. And look, we just hope we try to engage as much as possible with the public. And I suppose for me, what we're always looking at, what is the right thing for the park, or what's the right thing for the green, or what is the right thing for it? It mightn't be what's the political right thing or what might interfere with something, but like I always write, we want this here to be here for somebody in the future, and how do we go about that the best way? And it is, it can be difficult, with that, but we're looking at how, are the toilets up to standard? Something as basic as that. Is the food offering right? Because when people come to a place, the pint, the pub, and the pit, we don't do the pints, but you have to make sure you have a cup of tea, and the view has to be good, so that the view, the toilets, and the food, they're really.
No, it's vital. I know our chairman, the first thing he'll check every time he comes into the little museum is the bathrooms. So I understand that remark. But it is one of those things, and it's, the OPW, and I guess you yourself have been incredibly generous to us in the museum, giving us access to Stephen's Green over the last number of years to actually be able to run the walking history tours that we do and actually are doing daily at this stage. And it's been something that's made such a difference to us, and it has helped us to actually grow and build the museum over the past decade. And I think, getting my opportunity to say thank you for that, I'm going to take it. We really have appreciated it. It has, I can imagine that there's many other organizations like ours who are kind of touched by the works of the OPW and kind of are impacted and probably better off as a result. But I think just kind of amazingly, it's been a very, very quick hour, but we're kind of just coming to the end of it. And I guess my kind of final question is really, when you look to the future, when you look to the next chapter of the story of, the portfolio run by the OPW, either from a sustainability point of view or just more generally, what are you hopeful for? What do you hope the next chapter looks like?
Well, it's a very interesting question, and OPW today actually launched its new strategy for the next 3 years. So, and you didn't know that, Sarah. And we're looking at the impacts of climate change. That is definitely going to, and that, that's not just from a flooding point of view. That's how parks, we're getting all our rain in sharp bursts. The impact of that, can our drainage systems take that? Our grounds are drying out far quicker. We have new tree diseases that we never had before. we're just waiting for oak processionary moth to jump across from England, you know, and that will have a huge impact on all our oak trees. So, you know, for the future is, you know, to try and make our sites as resilient as possible, to be able to adapt to climate change. Obviously, the state sustainability agenda is very, very important. I suppose, you know, while OPW is a very old organization, we have to modernize. We have to realize, and I think we do, particularly in the park side, that the public is our customers, they're our clients. And, you know, it's not that we know best. That attitude, you know, has really, really changed. You know, we do engage with the public, we do listen to what the public wants. And I suppose then is to bring our knowledge to bear on that, and, you know, what lessons we've learned in the past. So I think as an organization, you know, we're moving forward the whole time. We want to modernize. And I think we do recognize that we have some fabulous staff working within the Office of Public Works. And I say that not just from the chairman down, but also even from the litter picker up, you know, all are essential. And, you know, it's very important that we talk to each other and we talk to the public. And we just want something here that the public will enjoy. And, you know, in the future, there'll be something for their children and grandchildren.
Yeah, well, I would dare say, for many of the people on this call with us this evening, you and your colleagues have collectively played a good part in making the past 14 months that little bit more manageable. So for that, I do appreciate it. But no, Margaret, I still have about 20 topics I'd hoped to touch on, but I think we've come to the hour, and so really, I've so thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. It's really been wonderful to get to hear about, I guess, the work that's going on, and to hear a bit more and to understand a bit more. So sincerely, thank you so much for taking the time.
No, delighted. And I just see one question there about the deer, and I might answer it.
Please.
Just as nearly a health warning for everyone. We do ask the public not to feed the deer and not to go within 50 meters of the deer in the Phoenix Park. The fallow deer are wild deer, and they actually now are starting to come to the public. We've done a lot of research with UCD, and the public, we have a big campaign out at Christmas and with social media, but they are wild animals, and, you know, we don't want to get them tamed. So we would ask people, don't feed the deer, don't encourage anyone to go near the deer. And if you do see people, contact the rangers. Their phone numbers on the website, and they will go over and intervene and, you know, inform the public of the reasons why not. It actually damages the deer's health. If they eat domestic food, it will actually impact their health, and nobody wants to see that.
Well, on that very sage advice, that is a perfect point to draw the evening to a close. So to everyone who's been here, thank you so much for taking the time. And Margaret Gormley, Margaret, this has been really wonderful. So thank you so much. And that's it for us. This is the end of another week of 120 Dublin Stories with Santa Rita and the Little Museum. So we'll see you all next week. And Margaret, thank you again and good evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you.